Welcome to another episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast with your hosts, Shawn Sorrentino and Aaron Paulette.
Welcome to episode 108 of the GunBlog VarietyCast, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. How are you doing, Aaron?
Well, I am very excited for the Gun Rights Policy Conference. It's happening in 2 weeks. I don't know about you, but I have already made arrangements to meet with some really cool people like firearms instructor and Oleg Volk model Sarah Cade, Pink Pistols member and member of the Blazing Sword Board of Directors Nikki Stallard, and of course our very own contributor Tiffany Johnson. So I don't know what you're going to be up to during the conference, Shawn, but I am going to be hanging out with all the cool kids.
Yeah, so I'm going to a firearms policy conference, and Aaron is stealing all the women. Does anybody else see the problem with this?
I don't know why it's a problem for you, Shawn. You're married.
What's that got to do with anything?
Just trying to look out for your reputation, bro. But, what can I say? Women love the ponies.
I'll be wearing a pony?
But you're not living the pony. So speaking of wearing them, the t-shirts have been ordered. They look great. They're in the mail. I'm still haggling a little bit with the people that are doing the embroidery for the polo shirt. Your design looks fine. I'm being a little bit nitpicky because my pony's coat is cream colored and her cutie mark is sort of an orange and yellow, and on the embroidery it just looks like a mess, and so I'm trying to get them to put a black outline around it, make it look better. I may have to end up paying more for it, but it's important to me that my pony look good and not just be sort of a mess on a polo shirt. But as soon as I get that ironed out, we're going to get them mailed to us, and we really ought to have them in time for the conference. So you're going to be definitely be-ponied, Shawn.
Yay.
So how are you doing, Shawn? What are you up to?
Well, today I stopped in at Triangle Shooting Academy, which is the wonderful place that has treated us so well for Operation Blazing Sword, and I picked up the P320. I made the final payment on the layaway P320.
Now that's a Sig in 380, right?
It is a Sig Sauer in 9mm.
Oh.
It's the P320 in 9mm. It's the P320 compact, so it's roughly a Glock 19 sized. It's a nice little gun. And Sig has rigged them up so that you can take off it's called a grip module. And for $40, you can change the grip module. So people who say have hobbit hands can get the size small grip module. And you don't have to send it into somebody and spend, I don't know, $300, $400, $500 getting it whittled down to your size.
I just took a Dremel tool to mine. It's fugly, but it works.
Right, so you don't have to go to the Wile E. Coyote School of Gunsmithing either.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the backstrap, and you can change the...
No backstrap. I'm talking like the whole thing comes off.
Oh, clever.
There's like an entire fire control group on the inside. It takes minutes, like literally drop the mag, field strip it, take the barrel, take the slide off.
I know what field strip means.
Pull out the, whatever they call it, the takedown lever, yank it out. Lift up on the trigger group, pull it out, and you have a plastic grip. That's all it is. It still has the little push button to drop the magazine, right? Drop that, pull the other one that you have purchased for all of $40. Drop the fire control group in it, and then put it all back together. Completely different size. They have 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. Comes with a medium. It's too big for you. Get the small. I'll be buying a small because, say, the person that I was teaching, John, found that the medium was too big. So I'm going to get a small. So in case I run into people who have small hands and I need to teach them, I'll have a small in hand and I can just say, hey, here you go, try this.
Okay, so Sig must be doing something unusual because in my experience, the lower part of the pistol with the frame and the grip and all that, that's technically the firearm. That's how it is with my Glock.
Exactly. The Sig P320, which is sort of, and not really, but kind of sort of a version of the P250, the fire control group is the serialized part.
Oh, so the trigger mechanism.
Exactly. So the fire control group, which has all of the trigger parts, that's the serialized part. That is the gun.
Well, that makes a hell of a lot more sense, and I wish Glock would do something like that.
Right.
That's one of the things that's always been very strange to me and seemingly arbitrary, how the lower for most guns is the part that's considered the firearm. I don't want to give the ATF any ideas, but if I had to pick a part to be considered legally the gun, I would have picked the barrel.
Got me.
Yeah.
It's all arbitrary.
Oh, yeah.
So I had the worst bike ride ever, at least the worst bike ride that didn't involve getting hit by a car ever.
Okay, so is everyone safe?
Oh, yeah, fine. Totally okay. The problem was we got hit with a terrible storm. The whole world was coming to an end on Friday when the hurricane came through.
Yeah.
The one you slept through? Like, I was pretty sure that you were, still asleep when it hit us.
Yeah, probably.
Well, it was raining most of the day Friday, and normally I'd ride my bike, 12 miles or so on Friday. And I get up early on Saturday, I walk my dog, then I go out and I do my long bike ride on Saturday. And it's been 25 miles. Well, I had gone out and I had figured, here's a nice 32-mile ride. Because I was getting 15 to 16 miles an hour on a bike ride, I figured I wanted a straight up 2-hour bike ride. Well, it was raining. I'm like, I am not going to be able to go ride this morning. I didn't walk the dog because it was raining and I'm kicking around the house. Oh, it sucks. It's a long weekend and I didn't get to ride on Friday and I'm not going to ride today and I'm going to have to wait till Sunday. I'll be able to ride and I might be able to ride on Monday, but Monday is a normal day to ride anyway. So this is going to suck. And then I pulled up the weather map and I see that there's no rain at about 9 o'clock. And I look outside and the clouds are still out. I'm like, this is awesome. It's overcast and it's still kind of cool. So I run out to the garage and I start grabbing my stuff and I jump on the bike and I jump out there and I start going. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. This is great. And I get 3.4 miles down the road. I hang a right-hand turn onto North Carolina 96 North, right into the teeth of a headwind.
So you went out during the eye of the storm, didn't you?
No, there was no eye of the storm. The storm was long gone.
Okay.
No, the storm was gone. At least the rain part of the storm. But see, just because it's not raining doesn't mean the wind has stopped. And if it wasn't a headwind, it was uphill into a headwind. It was awful.
But you got good cardio.
156 average heart rate. I was dead. I was dead all the rest of the day and half of the next day. I was just I got home and I just laid on the couch.
What's your typical heart rate when you do this?
About 135, 136, 138, something like that.
Okay.
It's not too bad. I mean, I don't go out and hammer because this doesn't do you any good just to beat yourself up for 2 hours. On the plus side, I got a Facebook Messenger from listener Robert. Now, you remember Robert because you interviewed him.
Oh, yeah, that Robert. Great guy.
So Robert, he Facebook messaged me and he says, hey, you were talking about the rifle, the Ruger American rifle, and I tried looking all over the place and I cannot find a Ruger American rifle, and I'm really looking for one. You said that there was a 30-06 Ruger American rifle at the Walmart near you. Is it still there? And at this point, I am bored out of my freaking skull. I've been laying on the couch in a daze for I don't know how long at this point. And I'm like, oh, something to do. And I got off my butt. I jumped in the car and I drive the 11 miles to Walmart. And just as I've gotten there, he's managed to find that Walmart's phone number and has called them. And I get a message, yeah, they've got it. And I'm like, yeah, they do. I'm staring at it right now. $199. He's like, can you hide it? Can you stand there and pretend to be making the decision and fight people for it? I can be there in 3 hours. So I'm like, ma'am, can you hide this for my friend? He'll be here in 3. She's like, well, I get off at 8 and I might call me. He calls me up. I said, look, if you can be here, paperwork signed, walking out the door with it by 8 p.m. when she gets off work, you can have it. So he and his wife jumped in their car and they picked up the rifle. They took my wife and I out to Mexican dinner and we had a lovely time. He got a 30-06 Ruger American rifle for $200 and a fun time was had by all. It was really awesome. Got to meet him finally. You got to meet him at the NRA convention.
I sure did.
Weird got to meet him at the NRA convention. I got to meet him finally. He got a Ruger American rifle and we got Mexican dinner. It was a wonderful time. Great weekend. Bad bike ride, but great weekend.
Yeah, I actually got a Facebook message from his wife telling me that they were something along the lines of, hey, thinking about you, wish you could be here. And so I'll just add that to my list of wines. I want the Ruger American, but I can't afford it. And now people are having fun without me.
Yeah, I know. Well, I feel your pain. I can't find the Ruger American rifle that I want because Walmart's not selling the Ruger American Ranch in 300 Blackout. In fact, I sent an email to the CEO of Ruger saying, hey, look, Walmart's not selling it. Can you hook a brother up? Help me out here. I'm a podcaster. I'll talk about it on the podcast. I really want one. I've got a suppressor that would fit on it. I will hunt deer with it for deer season from October 15th until the end of the year, unless I happen to get all 6 deer that I'm allowed, which that would be good advertising, right? That'd be great on the podcast, right?
Absolutely.
And, well, I mean, I sent something on Monday and it's Thursday now, so I haven't heard anything back. But hey, if anybody knows anybody at Ruger and, tell them $200, I'll pay them the $200 that Walmart's charging.
Yeah.
They don't even have to give it to me for free, or they can send it to me for T&E. Great. That'll work.
So speaking of podcasts and begging, apparently my whimpering, 2-3 podcasts ago about how I would be happy to appear on other people's podcasts if they would just invite me, but no one would invite me. Well, apparently that worked. So the guys at Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns invited me to be on their show, and I was. And there's going to be a link in the show notes. And I had a fun time. We kind of wandered all over the place. We had a bit of... Actually, it's not so much we had a bit of ADD squirrel moments. That was most of the show.
Yes, I listened to all of it today. Bits and pieces of it yesterday, and I finished it off today. It was all ADD with a little bit of not.
Yeah, I have to do this sort of preemptive mea culpa. At one point, we were talking about the High Point carbine. And in my head, I said, yeah, you can get it in the expected 40 caliber and 9mm. And I would have sworn that's what I said, but I actually went back to my recording. And what I said was, yeah, you can get it in 40mm. And that's just, I know how dumb it sounds. I know how big 40mm is. I'm aware. So I'm sorry.
Well, so why don't we get on with the rest of the show? We've done quite enough intro.
All right. Sometimes it seems that Beth lives a life of gunny glamour. She's always gallivanting about, meeting new and interesting people, going to great places, and shooting guns. This week is no different. She's in Raymond, Mississippi, at Boondocks Firearms Training Academy, speaking with the owner, Kim Condon.
So this week I'm actually out here in the beautiful Raymond, Mississippi area, and I've had the privilege of teaching a USCCA instructor course at Boondocks Firearms Training Academy. And I've been here before, and I was absolutely floored by what I saw. It is a beautiful facility, but it's also a very unique facility. And I have with me the owner who is going to share a little bit about how this place came to be. So Kim, tell us a little bit about you and all about where Boondocks came from.
Well, Beth, it really started, it's a kind of a funny story. It all started with me personally trying to seek a self-defense class or a basic pistol class because I had no experience with a firearm whatsoever. Went to Arizona to get my first introduction to formal firearms training out in Arizona. Spent a week there, and it was life-changing. Came home, had to get my enhanced carry permit class, and so I took it in a barn in a small town close to where I live. Came home that evening, had supper with my husband, and we had the conversation of, is there not a place around here like there was in Arizona? And it doesn't exist. So we happened to have the land already. And so I told my husband, and it just kind of fell out of my mouth, well, let's build it. And he was like, what?
Wow.
So that's the God's honest truth. It really was over supper. And when it came out of my mouth, it was an emotional statement. And I'm not a real touchy-feely, emotional, mushy kind of person. But I felt it. And, when you do something and you don't get any opposition and you get no pushback, it's meant to be. Mm-hmm. We had none.
Wow.
Through the whole process of rezoning, the whole process of building, doing the plans, everything. No roadblocks whatsoever. So I knew it was meant to be. The design of the place is catered to the female. It's not pink and it's not girlied up, but it looks like a Colorado Lodge. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of that is to lower the intimidation factor so that it's not tactical Timmies and camoed out. And so that females feel comfortable when they come there. They feel like they're on vacation.
Right.
It opens up their mind to learn because that intimidation factor is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard it time and time and time again. So it has worked. And so that's basically how it came to be. It's really kind of a fluke how it all came to be.
Now, is your goal then ultimately to reach women, or what are some of the programs that you guys are offering?
We do offer women-only programs, but yes, actually the beginner shooter, because that's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was a beginner at the beginning. It's kind of a cliche, but it was. Everybody started out as a beginner. So we want to build a good foundation and go from there. So we have advanced classes. So we start with your basic pistol. Mm-hmm. And we do have the women-only classes taught by female instructors only, so that it's, more catered, lower ratio to student, thing, so that they understand that it's not about a certificate mill. We're not just trying to run a bunch of people through there to get certificates. It's all about education. And it starts with the basic pistol. And then we move up to the simunitions. It's actually UTMs that we're using, but it's a force-on-force where you're doing true reenactments, which is serious stuff, but it's a stepping stone. And we try to tell our students when we start out, you're not, you can't take one black belt. You can't be a black belt with one karate lesson. So it's got to be a process. It's got to be a layering process. And that's what we're about, is about education.
Now, of course, the Boondocks is an outdoor training facility, but
Right.
Tell me a little bit about the range and about the pavilion area and the other things. You've got quite a facility. I mean,
Yeah.
There's a lot of neat things happening.
Well, okay, think about it. When I went to Arizona, I pulled up to a school.
Right.
Okay, it had bathrooms, it had a classroom, it had ranges. So when we built this out, we built that with that in mind. You're going to need to pull up to a facility. We have a pro shop, which is our retail side of the world, so that we can provide, ear protection, eye protection, holsters, gear that they need. So we cater to that. It's kind of like a boutique. It's not
Right.
a huge, department store of stuff, but it's a very catered to, pro
Gun
shop.
rentals, ammunition, all those other
Exactly.
things. too.
Everything
Right.
you'll need to take a class. So
Plus a T-shirt.
Plus,
you know,
well, yeah, you got to throw some, you got to throw some stuff in there. But and so that's just one of those souvenir type things.
Yeah.
But we built it with everything in mind to make it all inclusive. We built a pavilion, which it's funny because the whole purpose of the pavilion was to make it an eating facility so that people could get out of the classroom and go somewhere else on the property that would get their mind out of the classroom mode for just a little bit, give them some reprieve, and then go back into the classroom. And it's turned into a wonderful facility for meetings. We have people in the area that want to rent out that space for different types of meetings. So it's kind of a dual purpose. It's kind of turned into that. We have bathrooms. We have a 4-plex bathroom on the pavilion side, we call it. And then we've got 2 bathrooms on the range side. So we've actually got 3 ranges. One is a covered range, which is where our beginners, because, as a beginner, they don't want to get wet. They don't want to get hot.
Right.
They don't, So we try to cater to that. So we've got fans and lights and all that. And then we've got a more advanced range, which has your turning target system and the more advanced skills. And then you have what we call the alumni range. And that's where when you take a class with us, you become an alumni. Because we're not a membership range. It's a school. So you become an alumni of the Boondocks, and you can come out on Saturday and Sunday and practice, what you've learned. And you're under the instruction of an RSO who is an instructor on staff. So
Right.
we constantly have our bases covered. It's not a free-for-all ever. And then we've got the pit in the back of the property, which has turned in, it's where our force-on-force, our
Right.
shoot house and all that stuff is.
Well, and you were saying something to me earlier about, if you can do it.
Everybody can do it. And I don't want to say
Everybody.
anybody, because it's not everybody can do it. And I'm 50 years old, and I just got into this, and only in a very short period of time. I've only been doing it like 5 or 6 years. So it's a very short period of time that I've been doing this. But when you make your mind up to do something, and you're passionate about it, and you understand that you're capable of doing it, it's just a matter of putting yourself in that situation and being educated and finding good teachers, because that's where it begins.
Right. Well, thank you, Kim
You're
Condon,
welcome.
for all the information and sharing with us about the Boondocks out here in Raymond, Mississippi. It's a fantastic place. I hope you guys can have an opportunity to come here and check it out. They are open every day except for
Yes, the only day we're closed is Tuesdays.
Tuesdays. That's what I thought. Okay, but check it out when you have an opportunity. And until then, stay safe and be well armed.
You can read more from Beth at usconcealedcarry.com/blog and click on Pacifiers and Peacemakers in the left sidebar.
This podcast runs on your donations. Go to GunBlogVarietyCast.com and click on the donate or the subscribe button in the right sidebar. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly, and a little help from you is a big help to us.
Felons Behaving Badly. Now this one was sent to us by friend of the show, George.
Hi, George.
2 men accused of breaking into Union County Chief Deputy's home in custody.
Oh, that's a bad decision all around.
Dateline, Union County, North Carolina. 2 men suspected of breaking into the home of a Union County Chief Deputy have been caught thanks to the quick thinking of an auto mechanic. Chris Summerfield said he was working Saturday at Summerfield Tire and Service in Waxhaw when the 2 suspects, Suspect 1, 28, and Suspect 2, 20, walked up. They asked to use the phone and for a ride to Charlotte, Summerfield said. I told them I couldn't let them use my phone, Summerfield said. He said he felt something wrong about the encounter and remembered his mother told him the night before about a manhunt in the area. I pulled around and I asked one of the other techs if they knew the description of the guys running. He said one was 5'11" and the other was 5'6". I thought, that's gotta be them, Summerfield said. He called 911 and said officers arrived quickly. They took Suspect 1 into custody, but Suspect 2 ran off. Suspect 2 was later caught at a convenience store in Waxhaw. Both men are under felony charges of breaking and entering, conspiracy, and larceny after breaking and entering. There are more charges to come, officials said. Suspect 1 and Suspect 2 are accused of breaking into Chief Deputy Todd Elmore's home Friday. Elmore's wife was home during the break-in but was not hurt. Officials confirm a firearm was stolen.
So was this just poor selection in the burglary process, or did they deliberately target the home of a deputy knowing that he would have at least one firearm there?
There's no real information on that, but let's take a look at the person involved here. Suspect 1 is the only person who has a criminal record. Larceny, misdemeanor class 1, misdemeanor breaking and entering, misdemeanor class 1, speeding to elude arrest or attempted, misdemeanor class 1, so that means that he did that before it became a felony. Felony breaking and entering, felon class H, larceny after breaking and entering, felon class H, and 5 counts of common law robbery, felon class G. Now, common law robbery is a violent crime, so he's not strictly a property criminal. He's also a violent criminal. So it's hard to say in this case that he's strictly a house burglar who accidentally picked a house that was occupied at the time.
Well, failure in the victim selection process is really all we can say here.
Over the holiday weekend, ITT Tech shut their doors. That titan of daytime commercials fell afoul of federal student aid rules and got their money spout cut off. But what does that mean for computer students? I asked Barron, and he told me about it in Tech Tips, Tech Tips, Tech Tips.
You are damaging my calm.
Tech Tips with the Barron. Barron, you know those commercials you see on TV from ITT Tech where they promise to teach you computer skills so you can get like a tech job? Well, the government just cut off their financial aid program, so they shut down. I'm seeing people say they were nothing but a scam anyway. Well, you work in the tech field. Do you ever see people who have their training from places like ITT Tech or DeVry or someplace like that?
Personally, I've never worked with anyone who had degrees from ITT Tech or DeVry. Now, that isn't to say those people aren't capable, because I have worked with people who don't have any degree at all. What they did have was a large amount of industry experience that made them valuable. For example, you ever play the old game Age of Empires?
Well, my wife and I used to play Age of Empires 2, Age of Kings. It's a real-time strategy, real-time tactics game.
Correct, and the reason that game was successful hinged on the graphics engine. The person responsible for optimizing it and making it work so well dropped out of college after a really nasty hazing incident where the basketball team basically beat the crap out of him. Given the school, they weren't going to knock the championship team, so my friend was just hosed. After that, he moved to Texas and worked for companies such as id and Ensemble Studios. The thing is, he's not the only person I know without a degree, and I know a few others with 4-year degrees in unrelated fields. I know plenty who do technical work and just carry certifications. Here's the thing about ITT Tech though. They weren't accredited. You couldn't take your credits to a different school and continue your degree. It also meant there's no benchmark to prove the value of your degree.
You mean there's no independent party proving the value of the education?
Exactly. So what you really had was a very expensive mill providing things that you can get for free or at lower cost through external resources. For example, Cisco certifications. You don't need to go pay someone a couple grand to do it. There's plenty of free or low-cost online courses. Really, all you need to pay for is the exam for the certification, and that's $300 the last I checked. Do you really need to spend $3,000 on something like that? To make it worse, some of the horror stories were people going back to get an advanced degree after they had finished an associate's at ITT Tech and continually having classes added despite their previous associate's degree. So let's talk about the broader topic of education. For the most part nowadays, education is free. You can gather and study to your heart's content with the internet and the Open Courseware initiative. Everything I studied in school, I can study and read for free. Now, while currently I would use my own computer and internet connection, a library can help you if you lack these things. But just because you study these things on your own doesn't prove you actually know or retain the material. This is why accreditation matters. But it only really matters for the first job out of school or the first couple years depending on what you're doing. Because after that, your job history should be speaking for your abilities and skills. For example, a lot of material on my resume I didn't learn in school, but that is now what is getting me job offers and interest. I've shown my ability to learn, work, and deploy, and ultimately, that's what employers really care about.
So what's the fallout going to be from this ITT Tech closing?
I saw a few friends who went to ITT Tech freaking out thinking that it was really going to hurt them. I think if you're currently employed and have a good work history, you're going to be fine. Apart from my first job out of college, no one has cared other than, do you have a degree? I've only heard of one story of a place asking someone about their degree and GPA 20 years down the road. That was my dad, who had a simultaneous master's and bachelor's from MIT. He graduated top of his NROTC class and fairly high in his overall class. Know what my dad did in that interview? Stood up and walked out. Because after 20 years, what you did or how you got your education is irrelevant, especially in tech. I quit my job in Eastern Washington because I saw my skills becoming irrelevant because of how fast tech moves. What matters is, can you learn and are you capable of problem solving? Now for the bad news. For those who were mid-degree or just wrapping up a degree from ITT Tech, you're f***ed. It's worthless. The cat is out of the bag regarding the classroom environment and the lack of accreditation. My recommendation is to study up on freely available courses. If you do have to pay for an education, make sure that it's accredited, most likely a community college or higher. For those thinking about going to college and getting into tech, an associate's from a community college is fairly cheap and proves your ability to learn and work. Depending on what you want to do, a BS can be beneficial because of the additional background it can provide. The associates, though, will strip the bullshit prerequisites of a 4-year degree, lowering the overall cost. Think of it this way. The only degree that's really cared about is the last one. Save your money and just do the polishing at the end. Remember, really what you're paying for is someone saying, yes, he has shown proficiency in the material. Overall, be wary of these types of schools. Phoenix and DeVry both come to mind. Unless they're accredited, they are providing zero value to you. Anything you think they're giving you, you can get for free. Now, this isn't to say that accredited schools are free from issues either. For example, a degree in philosophy of lesbian Icelandic poetry will probably only be useful to provide subject matter when talking to the other baristas.
All right, Barron. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Shawn.
Barron still blogs at the-minuteman.org.
So, Shawn, in the opener, you mentioned that we were a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. What's going on with that?
Well, I got a chance to sit down with Bob Mayne of Handgun World podcast, who, along with Paul Lathrop, is the co-founder of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and he and I talked about it. Bob Mayne has been hosting Handgun World podcast for 7 years, and with Paul Lathrop, is the co-founder of Self-Defense Radio Network. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you, Shawn. Thanks for this opportunity. It's good to be here.
Bob, what is the Self-Defense Radio Network, and what does it bring to the listener and to the podcasters involved?
Well, the Self-Defense Radio Network is a collection of Second Amendment self-defense advocating podcasts, such as yours. Paul and I decided to put this together to benefit the listener in a very important way. One of the primary benefits that listeners are going to get when they tune into any of the shows on the Self-Defense Radio Network, beyond the content, is we're putting together specials from our advertisers. And I think you're going to like the advertisers. I can't divulge them all yet, but once we get the final agreements in place. You're going to be able to get specials just by listening through the Self-Defense Radio Network and taking action. Plus, you're going to get all the great content of all the podcasts. We've got 11 of them now. That's the listener benefit. Now, the question about the podcasters, it's not a secret. The podcasters are going to be in this to grow their audience and to make a little bit of money. The advertisers are going to be generously supporting the network. And by doing that, the podcasters are going to be able to participate in some of the financial benefits of it. We're also going to be cross-promoting each other's shows. And what that means is we're going to be like we're doing now, like you and I are doing now, Shawn. You're interviewing me for your podcast. Other podcasters on the network might reach out to you or me and say, hey, come on the show. Let's talk about that. So there's a lot of things. We're setting up coupon codes for listeners that are going to get them discounts at certain gun-related advertisers and things like that. So those are the primary benefits. There used to be a network quite a few years ago called the Gun Rights Radio Network. And right after I started podcasting, I joined the Gun Rights Radio Network. That network dissolved a couple of years ago. But one of the great benefits of it that I would get is I would get much more increased exposure for my show. And the listeners would always say, hey, you know what? I'm glad that you're part of the network because this other podcast over here, this XYZ podcast, I never heard of them before. But now that you keep talking about this great network, now I've heard of them. So that's another benefit that the listeners are going to get.
I've noticed that since I've joined the network, I've started looking at some of the podcasts in the network, and I've started listening to some of them myself, and some of them are really good.
Yeah, they are. I've listened to every single one, a couple of episodes, including yours, at least a couple of episodes of each one, and they are very good. There are some very talented people in this business, and you're going to find a lot of them on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Selfdefenseradio.net is where you can find them all put together on that website, selfdefenseradio.net.
Is there anything that the network won't be doing for the listeners?
Yeah, Shawn, we're not going to have a forum. People have already asked. I've received emails about that. Hey, is there going to be some kind of a forum? No, they're hard to manage. Forums, gun forums, well, just about any of them on the internet tend to sometimes get a little out of control. So if listeners want to interact with the podcasters, see, that's another benefit of the network is it's easy interaction with the podcasters. Go to the Self-Defense Radio Network Facebook page. Go to the individual shows and put comments on there. You can also put comments on the website at selfdefenseradio.net. So I wanted to put that out there because people have asked me if there was going to be some kind of a forum. The previous network I mentioned a few minutes ago had a forum, and no, we're not going to be doing that.
Well, I'm glad because I really hate forums. Forums degenerate into flame wars. They're just, and firearms forums are basically the Mos Eisley Cantina. They're like the sewers underneath the Mos Eisley Cantina. They're as bad as they get.
Well, you're right. I go on to firearms forums and I try to contribute. I try to put good content on there, things that make sense, that are learning experiences, and people don't want to read it, and then they start flaming, and I hate this. They'll quote one line out of a 2-paragraph post, and they'll take off and they'll start trolling me on that one line, and it's like, forget that. So we're not going to be doing that at the Self-Defense Radio Network.
So how many podcasts are there on the Self-Defense Radio Network?
11.
And where can people find the Self-Defense Radio Network?
Selfdefenseradio.net. And again, that's not .com. It's selfdefenseradio.net. The website's up. Everybody, including you, Shawn, they're posting their episodes to the website. If you want, you can just listen from from the website itself. You can listen if you have an internet connection. And otherwise, you can download each of the podcasts. I know every single one of them are on iTunes.
All right, Bob, it was good to talk with you. I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Shawn. Thanks for having me on. I'm Bob Mayne. I carry a gun because I can't carry a cop. Remember, my show is a practical show. It's a practical show done by me, a practical guy. And Shawn, I really appreciate this opportunity.
This week, Tiffany tells us how we can use movies and TV to bridge the gap between gun owners and non-gun owners on The Bridge.
You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. Did he climb inside of his skin? Walk around in it?
Hey guys, so what I wanted to talk about this week was my personal excitement that the film scene is finally about to heat up again after what has admittedly been a few weeks of drought in the theaters. Not only is the big screen going to light up with some interesting flicks coming out soon, but there's some good stuff coming out at the DVD store also. So as I myself am eagerly awaiting the release of Captain America Civil War on Blu-ray, I figured I'd share what I think is one of the most effective communication bridges between gunners and anti-gunners, and that's movies. Me personally, I am an incomplete being without at least a few theater escapes every month. So I even get grumpy and start having these obnoxious withdrawal symptoms after going for too long without seeing a good film. So I'm pretty rough on comedies, but otherwise, I'm basically game for just about any kind of movie if it's got something in it to reel me in. And that might be acting or plot, or it might be the action, or it might be the effects, or for me, it might even be something like the soundtrack. But I just think that there's something therapeutic about the whole experience of, kind of leaning into a solid 2 hours or so of good storytelling. And luckily, I'm not alone, because these days, most people with hot blood and a beating heart simply can't resist a good movie. And that's often true regardless of where you fall on Second Amendment issues. Even though Hollywood has a reputation for being predominantly anti-gun in real life, the films it produces often reveal quite the gun fetish within the four corners of the big screen. And the result is that most people are far more familiar with guns than they realize, or at least they're familiar with the romanticized versions of guns that often show up on film. So as gun people, I know that we like to lambast some of the on-screen silliness, like laughably unrealistic marksmanship or cartoonish gun handling, which I know happens quite often in movies. But one of my favorite examples of this was in the action-packed but ridiculously fantastical 2008 movie Wanted, with James McAvoy and Angelina Jolie. Morgan Freeman is in it too. Good cast, good thrills, but full enjoyment of this movie requires suspension of all disbelief, not to mention the laws of physics, as one episode of Mythbusters made plainly clear.
Cary Grant and Tori have discovered that if you simply mimic the movie Wanted, you won't bend bullets.
Too early.
Have to look at the high speed, but I'm pretty sure I curved that one.
They've even built a deadly accurate gunslinging robot, giving it the exact same sidearm action as the Myth, and still failed to get anything but a straight shooter.
The bullet didn't curve.
But of course, it's a movie, so the laws of physics don't apply. After all, transcending the walls of one's own reality, being able to kind of escape from the real world is a big part of what makes movies so addictive, right? And that's no matter who you are, no matter what you know, and no matter how many guns you own. So that brings me to my point here, which is this. Even two people with polar opposite views on guns can enjoy the very same gun-riddled movies together. But what doesn't occur to most people is that this is a perfect opportunity to shed a little light for the uninitiated. And if you're cool about it, then you can kind of slip bits of wisdom in there before your fellow moviegoer even realizes that he or she is unwittingly learning about guns, right? You can dispel myths just like Mythbusters does. Or you can, in some instances, perhaps start to sway opinions ever so slightly. Every little bit helps. But Movieland is a relatively unintimidating space, and it sometimes offers really convenient sort of merge lanes into tricky topics that might otherwise be harder to approach. So next time you're watching a good movie or discussing a good movie with somebody that you know or suspect to be anti-gun or even just gun agnostic, I think we as gun folks can use these opportunities to, test the waters a little bit. So For example, when a movie bank robber leaps onto the teller's counter with his finger on the trigger, right? You can turn to your non-gun friend and say something like, "Did you see that?" To which the person responds, "See what?" Or something like that. And then you can zip through that opening and sneak in an unassuming safety lesson before your non-gun friend even realizes what's happening or has a chance to recoil from the topic. Or if a movie murderer's pistol bullet sends his victim barreling through the air, as we've all seen happen in movies, you can make a friendly joke about how in real life, a lot of gunshot victims don't even know they've been shot. And here in Memphis, where we have top-notch trauma center, if you get to the hospital with a pulse, then you're almost guaranteed to come back out. And if you've just got a flesh wound or a through and through bullet wound, then you're probably going to get a Band-Aid and some painkillers. But certainly you're not going to find yourself flying through the air as a result of the impact of the pistol bullet. Or I know we've all seen this, when the hero cop in the movie clears a building by leading with his muzzle around corners and door jams. You can give your non-gun friend a little elbow poke or something and start something like, "Hey, you see what he's doing there?" Or do you ever think about how that could actually get him into trouble and on like that? Now, of course, all of this has to be done in moderation. The last thing you want to do is ruin the movie by peppering your friend with obnoxious questions and coming across as self-important and proselytizing and a show-off know-it-all gun snob. Please don't be that guy. And by all means, whatever you do, do not talk in the movie theater during the movie. God, I hate these people. Few things on earth irk me more than the person yapping away in the movie theater. So don't do that. Please don't do that. But if you have a moment during a commercial break, or if you pause the series, or maybe after a movie if you're at the theater, or during dinner or something like that, if you have a chance to sneak through an open door for modest dialogue, I would encourage you to not pass up those opportunities. And I can assure you, you'd be doing the Second Amendment a great service. It might not feel like earth-shattering progress in the moment, but believe me when I tell you from personal experience that every little bit helps. Every little taste of new information has the potential to whet the appetite for more. And while your first fun gun fact that you share with a non-gun friend might feel a little underwhelming, you'd be surprised to see that after a few more movies together, your non-gun friend might ask things like, "So, when he shot through the car windshield, do you know what kind of gun that was?" Or if you're lucky, their person might say something like, "So, was that the same kind of assault rifle that they just banned in Massachusetts?" And putting aside the kind of sloppiness or the perhaps innocently misinformed premises of that question, you, as the educated gun person, should see that as an opportunity to share information with someone who doesn't have it. And at that point, you really are breaking ground, even if it's just one time with one person. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, the goal here is not to turn every rabid anti-gun advocate into some sort of quick draw McGraw, right? That's just unrealistic. And we don't need that, frankly. The Second Amendment doesn't need that, in my opinion. Instead, all we need is a better exposed, more open-minded, more broadly educated electorate with adequate access to reliable information on both sides of the debate. We don't need a world that's full of nothing but pro-gun people. That would be cool, but we don't need that in order for the Second Amendment to survive. We just need enough non-gun people who understand what gun folks are all about. That's all. So on that note, everybody go curl up with your favorite movie, enjoy it, let it spark some enlightening but non-threatening conversation if possible. Stay safe, and as always, keep it centered and even.
You can follow Tiffany at frontsightpress.com.
And now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette.
Come on, every pony. It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette.
Hey, Shawn, did you know that September is National Preparedness Month?
Wow, really? When did that happen? Did you use your influence as El Jefe of Operation Blazing Sword to convince our El Presidente to start preparing for disasters?
I wish. No, it's actually quite old, which took me by surprise because I hadn't heard about it until now. Apparently, September has been National Preparedness Month since 2004, but the only reason I know about it is because the Washington Examiner did an article titled Prepper Obama. Says nation is on its own, preparing is your duty. And it's worth noting that the words duty and prepper in that headline are both in quotation marks. Now, if my English degree has taught me anything, it's that when you have a single word in quotes, it means one of two things. Either you're quoting another source verbatim, or you're using the word ironically. Now, I'm not going to say which usage it is. I'm just going to say that I searched his entire statement, and while I can find the word duty, I can't find the word prepper. Cheap shots aside, Obama's proclamation of September being National Preparedness Month is a good thing, because not only does it give national recognition to the notion that preparing for emergencies is a good idea, it also raises preppers out of the belief ghetto. Instead of being paranoid rednecks, we are now good citizens who are simply ahead of the curve in following the directions put forth by FEMA, the NOAA, and other federal agencies. In effect, prepping is becoming normalized within our culture by our media.
Right. I remember seeing a video last month where a TV station was talking about flooding in Louisiana and how you could get stuck in your car, so you needed to have some supplies there.
Yes, exactly. That segment is momentous because not only is a local news station urging people to pack and carry a get-home bag, they specifically use that name too. But the expert they interview also gives a variation of when seconds count, the police are minutes away. Here's the audio of that.
If you're like me, you spend a lot of your time in your car, but when severe weather strikes, you want to stay prepared. That's why experts say it's important to have a get-home bag like this.
The help is minutes away at best. You have to be able to be self-sufficient, at least for the short term.
So between this and the fact that the execrable Doomsday Preppers show is now off the air, and, of course, the fact that in the wake of many emergencies, disasters, and terrorist attacks, preppers suddenly seem a lot more rational, it is my sincere hope that prepping becomes seen as valid and hopefully a sensible lifestyle choice rather than just something that paranoid nutjobs do to keep the craziness at bay.
This is great, right? We can now let our prepper flag fly and not worry about keeping our prep secret, right?
Yeah, not so much, no. While I agree with you that normalization of prepping is a good thing, it's rather like normalization of concealed carry. Concealed means concealed, and you don't go around advertising to everyone that you carry. Similarly, you shouldn't tell everyone that you have emergency preps. And the reasons for this are twofold. As I've mentioned before, the moment you let everyone know you have preps is the moment that they think, I don't need to be prepared. If anything bad happens, I'll just come to your house, and suddenly you're the disaster grocery store for the neighborhood. And secondly, despite the president's rhetoric, I really doubt he's comfortable with the notion of people preparing against lawlessness by keeping sufficient guns and ammunition on hand in order to defend their supplies or their home from looters. So don't advertise what you have, and definitely don't advertise where you keep it. Maybe someday, in a mythical utopian time far in the future where everyone is responsible, we can open carry our preps. But today is not that day. So until then, carry your preps concealed and enjoy the fact that we're no longer considered paranoid.
Not only can you subscribe or donate to the podcast, you can also make a contribution to the LGBT Training Ammo Fund. Go to GunBlogVarietyCast.com and click on the LGBT Training Ammo Fund donation button in the right sidebar. I'll use this money to pay for range fees, targets, and yes, ammo for the people I teach. And thanks for your support.
Remember that anti-gun podcast Loaded Conversations? Well, after a prolonged absence, it has returned. Weird had to celebrate with yet another patented weird audio fisk.
In This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery. So hey, Weird, what do you got for me this week?
Does anybody remember the Loaded Conversations podcast? The last time we talked about them was way back in episode 89. 2 months after the last episode, Shawn was concerned that there might not be an episode number 5. Also, again, I must note, this is the only anti-gun podcast, and in 7 months' time, there have only been 5 episodes. And there is an approximate run time of about an hour and a half for all the episodes. Combined, not each.
Thanks to those of you who wrote and asked where we've been.
Hey, Shawn, I might have been one of those people to email her.
I might have emailed her too.
iTunes notes that the only people consistently listening to her show are people who have subscribed to shows like the GunBlog VarietyCast, The Law of Self-Defense, and Downrange Radio with Michael Bain.
You are on your own.
I kind of wonder if any of the curious fans were actual anti-gunners. I discovered this show by reading Joan Peterson's Twitter feed, and Joan hasn't mentioned the show since. Either way, she was gone for 3 months. It appears her original schedule, if she ever had a schedule to begin with, was 15 minutes every month, with 1 skipped month between episode 2 and 3. Clearly, she must have had a good reason for the absence.
I had a lot of good reasons for taking so long to produce this episode. Just as I was finishing another episode, the shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando happened, and threw my plans into disarray. I had kids home over the summer, actually persuaded my husband to take his allotted 3-week vacation this year. I could go on, but I think mainly I was just burned out.
Nope, she got burned out after making 4 short shows. Then she decided to take a 3-week vacation. My wife has enough seniority at her job that she gets 4 weeks off every year. But it's not like we take more than a week at a time. We take a few short vacations a year, and the rest of her time off is used for incidentals and a few long weekends. Must be nice to not be missed for almost a solid month. I have coworkers from India, and because of the flight time, they often take 2 weeks when they fly home. We understand, but it does lead to complaints as people have to cover for them. Also, burnt out after 4 episodes? This is episode 108. And I've been running a segment that's approximately as long as hers for every single show, not even including my few guest hosting shows. Of course, she also produces her show, like Shawn does this one. You burnt out, Shawn?
I'm just hitting my stride.
Maybe she isn't meant for podcasting.
For the past year, I've been talking to people who lost their children in senseless killings. Children who lost their parents much too soon. I've talked to people who think Obama is a freedom-hating Muslim. People who are convinced that we'll all be shot in our sleep if any limit is placed on our right to bear arms. These conversations aren't easy.
On second thought, maybe it's the subject. Note that this is the only anti-gun podcast. Compare that with 2 Second Amendment podcast networks. And there are loads of pro-gun shows that aren't on a network. There is a complete dearth of grassroots activists in the anti-gun field. Really, anti-gun activists can be described in 2 groups. People who are working for Michael Bloomberg, and people who are working for the dying vestiges of the Brady campaign and the Joyce Foundation. This clip really shows why. The politics of gun banning is a depressing one. You have to constantly wallow in the blood of innocent people, and not so innocent people, who are shot. You have to wring your hands over the pieces of crap who committed acts of murder and terrorism. And whether they fully realize it or not, they're peddling laws that aren't solutions to these problems. Universal background checks in the wake of crimes committed by people who passed background checks. Terror watch list bills in the wake of terrorist attacks where the terrorists weren't on any watch list. Bans of various classes and types of firearms that aren't used in crime and will only apply to law-abiding gun owners. And no matter how hard you try to avoid it, you're going to encounter those lawful gun owners whom you are punishing for the actions of bad people they have nothing to do with. And we don't appreciate that. On the other hand, yeah, we Second Amendment activists have our downers. I'm still pretty bummed about the actions of Attorney General Maura Healey and her assault on lawful gun owners. But I can take solace that the pro-gun forces are seeking real solutions to those problems, not cheap political statements. Also, our side has facts in our favor. Say it with me now. Gun ownership is up, violent crime is down. And when I'm not dealing with the politics, I can go have fun at the range, or hang out at my local gun shop, or teach someone new how to shoot. Their side is a total bummer from stem to stern. Our side is fun.
I have many fond memories of evenings, and even some days, spent in gay bars. The men, the music, the moonshine, the freedom, the dancing. From the first moment I stepped inside and heard the pound of that 120 beats per minute, I was hooked.
So now the Pulse nightclub terror attack is all about her. She frequented gay bars and had gay friends. But she wasn't LGBTQ herself. If she was, she would have said so right up front. This is a common theme among anti-gun activists. Joan Peterson of the Brady Campaign and Protect Minnesota constantly describes herself as a victim of gun violence because her sister was murdered by an abusive and insane husband. Balder Odinson of Ceasefire Oregon claims he survived a shooting because he was at a mall where two bad actors he didn't even know got into an altercation and one of them shot the other and then immediately fled the scene. Seriously, guys, why does this have to be all about you?
Gay bars, for their patrons, are places of refuge, of celebration.
Politically, yes. But don't conflate ideological safety with physical safety. Thanks to anti-gun activists like Ms. Flowers, the Pulse nightclub was a gun-free zone. Nobody in a bar in Florida, whether they are drinking or not, may carry a firearm. So the only protection that night was a single uniformed police officer in the parking lot, who was quickly driven off by the shooter. The anti-gun solution to this is to make everywhere like the Pulse nightclub, or downtown Chicago, or downtown LA.
The worst shooting on American soil by a lone gunman, a horrifying event that, if early indications are true, may mark the beginning of the end of the NRA's stranglehold on our country.
First up, the NRA's stranglehold on our country? Man, that's really rich. Second, the NRA's membership has been growing while you took your extended vacation after leaving the ironic tweet, #NoBill, And the House went into recess with no anti-gun bills brought up for a vote, because anti-gun politicians are about as dedicated as anti-gun activists. So last we have a clip from our interview with Columbus, Ohio Mayor Andrew Ginther.
There's nothing wrong with people who want to, own guns to either protect themselves or to hunt, but it's something totally different with an AK-47 or an AR-15, or quite honestly, if you need those types of things to hunt, you're a lousy hunter.
Oops! Looks like the mayor didn't spend much time updating his anti-rights rhetoric for the 21st century. Yeah, back as recently as the late 90s, a politician could talk about shooting ducks and deer, and maybe wave a walnut and blue steel rifle or shotgun around as proof of how strongly they support the Second Amendment. But then those bastards sold out the people who actually value the Second Amendment, because George Washington didn't cross the Delaware River to get to his duck blind. So now Mayor Ginther knows to toss in self-defense as a reason to own firearms, as well as good old hunting. But then he goes on with the, if you need an AR-15 to hunt, you're a lousy hunter. Maybe yes, maybe no. But what if I want to defend my life? Hunting restrictions were created to preserve game species for future generations. It appears that anti-gun laws are the exact same types of restrictions. Hunting regulations limit the number of shotgun rounds you can have in your shotgun so that you don't shoot up all the ducks and birds to save some for future generations. Anti-gun politicians want to do the same with your self-defense guns. Are they trying to preserve the criminal element for future generations? Does that seem very wise to you? Ms. Flowers claims she'll have a new episode out later this month. Maybe this time covering news that isn't 2 months old. I'm not holding my breath.
All right, Weird. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Shawn.
In addition to appearing here, Weird is a regular host on The Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
The plug of the week. I think I've plugged this before, RoadID, but I'm going to plug it again because, well, I found mine. I actually lost it for a while. I took my RoadID to Paul Carlson's class when I went up to Ohio and I took Paul Carlson's 2-day class. You remember the old medic alert bracelet? If you had some sort of medical problem and you fell down and nobody knew that you had epilepsy, or you had some kind of, low blood sugar problem, or, oh, what happened? I don't know what's the problem with them. Well, we'll just randomly treat you for whatever, and then they'll kill you because they don't know what your medical problem is, right? Right? That was why you had these medic alert bracelets.
Yeah.
RoadID is the medic alert bracelet for people who do sport things. You get on your bicycle and you ride around on your bicycle, or you go running. Do you carry a wallet when you go running? No, nobody does. Do you carry your wallet when you're out on your bicycle? Oh, maybe you do, maybe jammed in the seat bag underneath your seat, but probably you don't. Maybe you go to the trouble of taking your license and stick it in the seat bag, or, maybe something. But a lot of people tend not to have some form of ID physically on their person. So you're riding your bike down the road and some idiot isn't paying attention and just pile drives you off the side of the road, and they find you in a ditch and maybe they find your bike in a tree and they take you to the hospital as a John Doe. And when they finally ID you because they match your DNA to your old Army medical records 6 weeks from now, your family gets a letter if they can find them. Or they can look on your ankle or on your wrist and read the little tag that says, my name is, this is my wife's phone number, give her a call. Which one would you like?
Well, I definitely like that last one, especially if I have a wife they can call.
Or your mom, or your dad, or whoever your next of kin is. In my case, my wife and my father. So the first thing I thought was when I got a bicycle and I started riding a lot, I thought it's always possible for somebody to not find the wallet that I kept in the little seat bag because it's very easy for them to punt the bicycle underneath a truck or whatever and not find the bike. They've got the injured person. Are they going to go look for the bicycle when they've got this injured person that they're throwing into the back of an ambulance and taken to the hospital as quickly as possible? No, they're not. That is not their first priority. It's to save the injured person's life.
Yeah, the police might look for it as an afterthought during accident investigation, but definitely not while you're being carted off.
No, the first is let's stop the bleeding on this guy and let's make sure he can keep breathing.
Yeah.
Go to RoadID.com and take a look at some of the horror stories. These people are like, you get whacked in the head and don't even know your name. People who can't talk and they're like, and like wagging their leg at them and they look down and they're like, oh, look at that. This is the guy's name. And there's a phone number. Let me pull out my cell phone and start calling. Hey, yeah, I got Bob on the side of the road here. And they're like running for the hospital. Yeah, I'll take him to this hospital. We'll be right there. That was always my worst fear is that I'd be on the side of the road. I'm living far from my mom and dad. At the time I had a girlfriend. She was in college. Nobody would know where I was. I'm riding 50 miles. So I'd be like 25 miles from home in a different state because I was crossing state lines while I was riding a bike and nobody knew who I was or where I was. And now I'm riding, 30 miles. Who's going to tell my wife if I end up in a ditch someplace? Well, I'm also a person who takes shooting classes on occasion. I shoot IDPA. What if I put a bullet in myself by accident? What if somebody has an ND and puts a bullet in me? Well, it might be helpful. Now, I'm carrying a wallet while I'm doing this, but if they cut my pants off in the process of getting to my bullet wound and misplace the wallet, well, they're still going to have the ankle bracelet that I'm wearing with my name on it. So it'll have emergency contact information on it. So whenever I'm doing something dangerous, like riding a bike in traffic, or if I'm out doing a shooting class, I always wear it. And I always tell the instructor of the shooting class, which always, for some reason, weirds them out. Paul Carlson just looked at me kind of funny when I did it. I walked over to him and I pulled up my pants and I said, if anything happens to go sideways, Paul, my emergency contact information is on this band around my leg. Because even if they do have my wallet, does Paul have my wife's phone number? No, he can look through my wallet all he wants. He's not going to have my wife's phone number. He's not going to have my dad's phone number. So it's on my ankle. So RoadID.com. Take a look in the show notes. There is a link in the show notes for a $5 off coupon for the first 5 people who use it. If you get to the show notes and you use it, in the comments for this show notes, episode 108, post a link to your coupon code. They will offer you a coupon code. If you look for it, they'll offer it to you. That way, if somebody else comes by and tries to use the coupon code and it's not valid, they'll be able to use your coupon code. Pass it along. It's only available to the first 5 people that'll use it. So let them use yours. Let everybody save $5. Total cost on this, including shipping, to me for an ankle bracelet, 5 or 6 lines. So I had like 2 contacts, my name, the city I lived in, and like I put gun in handlebar bag so that the police, if they happen to find me on the side of the road in a ditch, will know, go secure the firearm on my bike. Don't just leave it there for some child to pick up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website now, and one of the things I notice is that in addition to different options, if you don't want something on your skin, you can get it on your shoe. You can get traditional dog tags. But the thing that got my attention is you can get actual dog tags for dogs. and have it put on their collar, big and small, so that way you don't have to have the jingle jangle noise or the cute little bone that barely contains enough info. You can have 4 or 5 lines of information about that, and that's really good.
Yep, there's a lot of different versions. The version I have, like I said, is the ankle version. I think it's 5, it might be 6 lines. It's at least 5 lines, and $23 including shipping. And with the $5 off, they're $18.
But, if I move like you move, you have to buy the whole thing over again, don't you?
No, you just need to buy the metal tag. And here's the thing. Now that I think about it, why do you need to put your street address? It's not like they're going to take you home. They just need a phone number for somebody to call. Put the city you live in, if you want to, but put your name, put contact phone numbers. So put the cell phone numbers. People don't change their cell phone numbers anymore. They just carry them with them. And then put down, if you want to, your blood type. That's important information. And like I said, like for me, I carry a gun in the handlebar bag on my bike. So I put that down so the police will secure the handlebar bag and won't just leave the gun laying there so some kid will pick it up.
Yeah.
Vital information is all they really need. And if you really want to go high tech, you really want to go all out, it's $10 a year. They have a version where you can put extensive medical information on their private server. It's not public. You can give access to people. I did not do that. I have no real reason to do that. If there's some particular reason why that's important to you, you can do that too. And whoever uses the code that's on the back, it's engraved on the back. If they've got that, they can flip it over. They can go to roadid.com, type in all the information on the back of that, and they can get it. I just have my doctor's phone number. They can call my doctor and they can ask him.
Actually, that's a good idea for people who have to make frequent trips to the ER, either because they're accident prone or they have a chronic illness like lupus or fibromyalgia. And instead of having to type out all the medical history, all the forms, all your allergies longhand, I don't know if the nurse would be willing to do this, but if you give them the information where they can pull it up on their computer, that will save you a lot of grief and maybe speed you through the admittance process. So I definitely know people who are in the market for that.
Copy paste works. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing for my peace of mind. If I ever end up with an inadvertent extra hole, or if I ever get punted off the road by somebody who isn't paying attention while he's driving, I've got something on me that will mean my wife and my father will get a phone call so they'll know where I'm at. And somebody who cares about me will be making medical decisions for me as opposed to somebody who just knows me as John Doe. So roadid.com, check them out, check the show notes, and you will find a $5 off coupon. And remember, if you buy one, put your $5 off coupon code in the show notes comments so that if my coupon code stops being useful, they can go down and use your coupon code.
And you better get on that because I want one of these. So I'm going to wait because I'm a good podcast host. So I'm going to give it at least a week. But after a week, if all those codes haven't been used, I'm going to take one. So get on it if you want one.
Well, that's our show for the week. Remember that the GunBlog VarietyCast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Find the show notes at gunblogvarietycast.com/episode 108.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast. Music courtesy of Rob Allen at blog.roballen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music. This podcast is made possible by the Firearms Policy Coalition and by contributions from listeners like you. This is a URS production.